Welcome into the Bobby Carpenter Show, and pleased to be here with you on this Tuesday, March 18th. Got a big show planned. Got my guy Bill Bender joining you. Schlegs, he's been traveling around. He's actually in Portland, but not Portland, Oregon. He's in Portland, Maine, up there. So he's going to be visiting Portland, Maine. He's got some flights and some different things, but I was told, I think, that he's going to be joining us at some point. He's going to be joining us at some point from the airport later. So I think maybe headlines, maybe a little tailgate talk. We'll be able to get him joined. But listen, folks, this is going to be an interactive show. If you have anything that you want to see or want to know about, please just shoot it our way, dump it in the chat, and I'll make sure to get to it. But we've got Bill Bender coming up. But it's an exciting time right now because the reality is we got college football, spring ball just started up. And I know we were talking about it last week, or on Monday rather, about it, get going. We talked about it a little bit last week and how big that's going to be and what it's all going to be about, but it's right here, right now. And so we've got college football, we've got spring practice. Day one was in the books for Ohio State. And there's going to be a lot of different little position battles, going to be some quarterback battles. There's going to be some new coaches out there, going to be a lot of different things. But Ohio State, their creative team does an absolutely tremendous job, and some phenomenal stuff. And so one of the great things that happens when you win is to the victor grow the spoils. So you get some new hardware up there. And that trophy, it's making its way around Ohio. It's still not in the trophy case right now over at the Woody Hayes, but they do have some banners to hang and some other stuff up there. And Pat, if we want to throw that up right at the jump street, we can take a look at this thing because this was pretty sweet inside the Woody when they get all the full updates.
The longest, toughest postseason climb is Ohio State together at the mountaintop. The longest.
So you see right there, and they show the four, obviously the bowl games. You get to see the new banner hung, and it's a pretty cool feeling because you walk in there, and those banners. I mean, listen, unless you're Alabama, where you're hanging one like 5 and 9 years, whatever the heck they had, or something like that, they're tough to get. And I remember we hung up the 2002 one, and then I remember when they got the one in 2014, and walking in there and getting a chance to see that today. Because I was still traveling out of town yesterday, to see that today and that banner in there gave me chills, gave me goosebumps. And because it brings back all the flood of memories and everything that's going on. And so when you see that, then you look up and you see the new numbers added during spring break, right before I left. There was just a flurry of activity. They were stripping down all the walls, all the things that had all the stuff that had the national championships on them, and they're getting new graphics, new displays, all new stuff. And so when the players come back, you got spring ball. So you're a little bit excited anyway, which is going to be great because Ryan talked about the three groups, and we'll get into that here as well. But when you walk back in the Woody Hayes, man, it is unreal because you start to see the new stuff popping up. And as that time has gone, there's more interactive stuff, there's more screens, there's things moving, and it's just boom, clips of all the great plays, all the great players, all the things up there. And now it's all updated with the names and the fact that Ryan Day is now a national championship winning coach. And when you walk through the Woody Hayes, you see that, and you see his record, and you see obviously what he's done. And the fact that he won a national title and the play, Jack Sawyer's play and all these different things, they're now immortalized ultimately there on the wall. And so for the players that were on spring break, guys got out a little bit, and then we're coming back in on Monday and getting a chance to see this and work at it. Like, boom. It's like, going into, your house and your parents are painting all the walls. Maybe you got new furniture, maybe some new stuff had happened. And I get like goosebumps, like thinking about it because it was so exciting and walking through there today, just seeing, and I had a quick lift, didn't have a chance to get around and do a ton, but to see the stuff that had popped up and all of the different things, it was pretty sick. And it was a good, really stinking good time. And it's a way now that, I mean, hopefully it's not forever that stuff is up there because you want to see them win again. And the more that they ultimately win, the more you have to refresh and update everything. But that's a good thing. That's a good thing. It had been 10 years. Before that, it was about 10 or 12, like, from 02 to 14 and 14 to 24. So, you go for 12. Now you're cutting it down to 10. I mean, I would love to see them be able to do something here faster than 10 years moving forward. And so hopefully they'll be able to get that done and get all that cool stuff. But they made a ton of coaching changes. Everybody talked about the big stuff that obviously happened with Brian Hartline getting promoted to offensive coordinator, bringing in Matt Patricia. We had Tim Walton on Friday talking about OG and being named co-coordinator and just kind of everything else, bringing in Tyler Bowen as the offensive line coach, promoting Billy Fessler. He was walking around recruits in there today, like all this different stuff. That's great. But then they also added, a lot of ancillary staff. So talking about Schleich and I talked about Tabor Johnson being back and how great that is. A guy who was at Ohio State 2 times before and has had some success, has been in the NFL, has been in college, been a coordinator. And so now he's coming back as a quality control assistant. But the one thing that Schleich was alluding to, folks, he was trying to tell you about on this show right here, about how big of a deal it was that, some of these former players are coming back. And he goes, there might be one more announcement. I'm pretty sure there's going to be one more. And so with that, we can toss this up with our guy, Nate Ebner, and former Ohio State safety. Nate Ebner joins the Buckeyes as a special teams quality control coach, sitting in on the defense as well. Nate didn't even play high school football, only played a couple years of college football. He ends up getting drafted, I think, in the 5th or 6th round by New England, plays about a decade in the NFL, wins 3 Super Bowls, and really is learning football in the NFL. And I can't express to people how difficult that is to learn the game at the highest level. Not like continue to learn about it. I mean, he's and like nuances of it, he's literally learning the game. And all the little stuff, that the verbiage and everything, because you've only been in it for a couple of years. And so the stuff that you take for granted when you've been in different systems and you have relatability, he didn't have that. And so we got there, and I was with him. My last year was his first year in New England. And Nate is one of the best athletes I'd ever been around. You watched him if you saw the Olympics, obviously, playing rugby there. I don't know what they call it in rugby. I think they're called tries. Scored some tries, but I called them touchdowns. I was like, Nate, you had a sweet touchdown run in there. I know you're a defensive player, but in the NFL, but that was great. But he's a phenomenal athlete. And now with him being back here, just recently got married, has a young child at home, and this is going to be his next step. And so, Ryan, you're bringing him on. His relationship with Matt Patricia, and Nate goes, I don't know if there's a defense I could know better than this. I know the defense like the back of my hand. So getting a chance to be involved, special teams, maybe help a little bit on defense, sitting in the room, like there's just a lot that can be done. And so adding him, which Schleich alluded to, was tremendous and very, very exciting to see him take this step and ultimately be with the Buckeyes one more time and have everything going. So Schleich has told me he is here. We got Bill Bender coming up in a minute. So I'm going to let Schleich know at the break. We're going to go about 20 with our guy, Bill Bender, because I got a lot of stuff, some college hoop stuff, college basketball. Take a look at that. The governor of West Virginia, holy smokes, is he tremendous? That's going to be awesome. And then we'll throw this up here just so I can bury it, Pat, and get over, because it crushed me on Sunday, and I knew it was going to happen. But the Buckeyes season is over, and they're declining an invite to Fox's college basketball crown tournament. The NIT, and the problem is I don't know what the team's going to look like. They don't start some of these tournaments here for a couple of weeks. And the issue is the transfer portal opens up. I mean, how many guys are going to have to be able to play? And so I don't know if they really thought through the windows when you start talking about some of these postseason tournaments, not the NCAA tournament and some of the lesser ones. And it's like, can you get guys to even be able to play and compete in these? Like, that's the challenge that you're going to have. So the season is over. Up and down year for Deebs. He did a lot of really good things. They had a couple of really tough losses, but they had a couple of really nice wins. We'll see. He's been recruiting well. Hopefully he can continue that recruiting run, because that's kind of his lifeline. It's his lifeblood. He's an Ohio guy, coach's son, brother played here. There's a number of good classes in Ohio coming through, and Diebler's the one that, I think that can consolidate and keep those guys home for the most part. And if he can do that, that'll be tremendous. But that is going to be his challenge moving forward. But the Buckeyes are out of the tournament. I'm going to ask Bill a little bit about the tournament. It's tough to get excited truly when Ohio State isn't even playing. Hell, even if they were playing tonight or tomorrow, it would have been something. But they're not going to be playing in the field of 68 now. And so that's something that we all have to come to terms and to grips with. But attention, parents, athletes, protect what matters most with Export mouth guards. Trusted by professional athletes, designed by NHL team dentists. Export mouth guards are scientifically tested to absorb high-impact hits, protecting both your teeth and your brain. Export mouth guards feature 3 layers of advanced protection, including a patented use of carbon fiber, custom fit to your own unique 3D smile. It means more protection, better performance, max comfort, clear communication, so you can focus on your game and not on your gear. Don't take chances with your safety. Visit exportguards.com/Bobby today. Save 15% on your order. Export, protect what matters most. We got Bill Bender, the sporting news, coming up next. All right, welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show, and we got our guy Bill Bender here joining us, talking a little college hoops, talking a little college football. We've got the culmination of everything happening here, Bill, as far as hoops and football. Buckeyes are in the starting spring ball now. We got the tournament, and they won't be playing, unfortunately, on the men's side, so that stinks with everything. But I guess what was your biggest takeaway from this college basketball selection tournament process this year?
Well, everybody likes to focus too much on quad one, I think. I was one of those people that had North Carolina in, and then on Sunday afternoon before we sent our final bracketology, I took them out because I listened to everybody else. It's a good lesson, for everybody. Don't do what everybody else is doing, and you'll end up getting it right, because we were so hyper focused on their 1-12 record against quad one opponents. But other than that, I didn't think there were too many surprises. I'm kind of glad Xavier slipped in, get to see them in the play-in games on Tuesday or Wednesday, and North Carolina plays tonight. And then other than that, the seeding was pretty good. I thought they got the Big Ten teams a little messed up. One thing with the Big Ten tournament championship, I would not threaten to, but I almost think they should move that back because, you saw Michigan, Wisconsin, Purdue. I think the bracket was already done, and that game didn't really matter about who got seeded where. I thought, I would have had it Wisconsin 3, Michigan 4, Purdue 5. And instead they went, I think it was 3, Wisconsin, Michigan 5, Purdue 4.
So, that's one of the things that people were talking about, who getting in. Obviously, North Carolina, they're a huge brand. They're a famous team, home of Michael Jordan, the Jumpman, the Carolina Blue, Dean Smith. All the legends that have come through there. The West Virginia governor made his pitch about why West Virginia could have been in, and I think Indiana could have had a reason to get in, and a gripe about it as well. Are you for expanding? Does the tournament need to be bigger to you, Bill?
I wouldn't expand it, but I think I would make these qualifiers. I think, like I said, we focus so much, the bracketologist types focus only on quad one record. And I don't 100%, I had to look it up again and realize, okay, what does quad one exactly mean? And then we get into their net rankings. And the thing so what I do, Bobby, is I take Ken Palm, which is one metric, and then net, another metric, average of the two out, and then the spreadsheet pops out and the teams are in order. And I'm like, that's probably what it should look like. And unfortunately for West Virginia and Indiana, they were near the bottom of that. So it didn't surprise me as much that they were left out. Now, how do we weigh going 500 in the Big Ten, which Indiana did, and down the stretch beat Michigan State, Purdue, and Ohio State in a really close game in Bloomington that was a bubble game? Yeah, I thought the Hoosiers probably had a stronger case to be in than West Virginia, and maybe we could have put them in over North Carolina even.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I was listening to Dan Dockich talk about this, and he made a talk, made a point about Bobby Knight, and he's like, I coached for the guy for 12 years, played for him as well. He would never have given me a benefit of the doubt, as well with that. And he goes, but he goes, he mentioned another coach who had been a GA for Knight. He goes, and he would have loved him. He goes, I'm not a fan of having ADs and former coaches on this panel. He goes, because they always have an axe to grind. And I don't know. I mean, as far as comprising the panel, Bill, about who makes up this, I know this is something we deal with in college football as well. Like, who do you think should be on there?
Okay, so if I was making it, and I know we have a college football playoff committee too, and I don't mind the makeup of that at all. As I remind people, a former college football coach like Jim Grobe watches the game differently than I do. There's no question. You watch the game differently than I do because you know more about the X's and O's about it. Now, with basketball, I would take some former college coaches. I would put a guy like Seth Davis. I would campaign for our guy, Mike DeCourcy at Sporting News. You see him on the Big Ten Network all the time. I think he's the best basketball writer in the country, and have a couple bracketologist types in there because they can read these rankings a little bit. But we still have to have people in there that know. When I watch North Carolina, I'm like, they're a good team. They're just not winning big games. So when I would watch Ohio State, the frustrating thing with Ohio State this year was they had some really bright moments and they had some really bad losses. The Northwestern one in particular sticks out, and they did not play well in the Big Ten tournament against Iowa. So, I think you have to have a mix of that. And then if I don't know that ADs need to be in there, but I think coaches, bracketologists, writers, maybe a couple former players too, like a guy like Clark Kellogg. You can't tell me he wouldn't be good in that room.
Yeah, I agree with you in that. And it only comes into focus right now when people start complaining. And my thing is, like, if you get to 68, what are we getting? 40 at large teams basically, and then Bill, like, at some point, like, let's win some more games. Let's win a game or don't have such a terrible loss. And like, as much as I wanted to see Ohio State get in, that Indiana loss, that was tough. The loss against Northwestern at home, where you were down by over 30 points at one point, like, that to me almost offsets like as good a win as Kentucky was.
Right. And that's something we look at. And when we were growing up watching the tournament, we didn't think about the net rankings. We watched the games and watched the teams, and you kind of knew, okay, this team belongs in and this team doesn't. And as the losses pile up, when you get a team like Ohio State, the losses did pile up. Texas, the losses piled up. Honestly, I'm a little surprised they got in the tournament. And I know the SEC had 14 tournament teams, and Texas was 6-12 in conference play. But if you start to look at the first round matchups, I think that conference is on the spot, not just to do well in the first round, but have one of these teams break through and win a national championship. We've heard all year about how great the SEC is. Auburn, Florida, Alabama, Tennessee. Yeah, they're good teams. But I pulled out a stat this week that I was really proud of in my bracket predictions. Did you know, Bobby, Tom Izzo is 9-0 against the SEC in the NCAA tournament? So if he sees Ole Miss, or if he sees Alabama, or if he sees Auburn, that's one coach that does not care about the SEC talk at all. He does a fantastic job at Michigan State. I think they have a great team.
That's amazing. That's a great stat you're able to pull that. And that's over. I mean, it's a pretty big sample size, Bill, considering he's been doing this for 30 years, it seems like. The SEC, I'm glad you went there with that, because that was kind of my next place that I was going to go. I mean, with all of the teams they get in, I know we have these mega conferences now. Do we play results with how they do in the tournament to say it was justified to get, their 12th and 13th, 14th team in, or, are they truly a basketball conference? Have they begun to morph? Are you surprised that they're this successful now in basketball?
The most surprising development to me is that the ACC is not deep anymore.
It's bad.
It's bad. You can say it. So we can say it. It's just bad outside of Duke, who's very good, and Clemson's good. I think Louisville's a solid team, but they gave them an 8 seed. They went 18-2 in their conference and got an 8 seed in the tournament. If you'd have told me that 10 years ago when you had like Syracuse and Louisville fighting for like the 9 seed in that bracket, it would have been absurd to think about. So I do think the ACC, that's one. And there's some talk, like it might have been you or somebody else, that should the ACC and Big East combine their basketball conference? then you're on to something, because at least you have, UConn and St. John's and those schools with the other schools. Those are the schools that take basketball very seriously. And yet North Carolina is scraping to get in as a play-in team. And the other thing, I do think the Rick Pitino story is going to dominate this tournament in a lot of ways. The way that St. John's plays, it's beautiful basketball. They won the Big East tournament for the first time since 2000. He's still got it in terms of being a 70-plus-year-old coach that's coaching with a lot of fire. And you mentioned Bobby Knight earlier. I was happy to see my son Grant watching, Pitino during a timeout yelling at the players. He goes, man, he coaches hard. And I was like, what's wrong with that? You're still allowed to do that, right?
That's how everybody used to coach back
Right.
then. He just hasn't changed. I mean, what's the story? What do you write, Bill, if 3 weekends from now, Rick Pitino and St. John's are in the Final Four and him taking his fourth different program? I mean, we're talking, I guess, whatever, Louisville, they were in the ACC, you got Kentucky in the SEC, Province. You got all of these great programs all across the country. Like, what's the story that we're penning?
Well, I think there's a couple options. It's either one, the 4 teams that I like in this tournament a lot are, one, Duke. Do we write the Cooper Flagg freshman phenom story? Is he good? Does the ankle still hurt? Duke has a lot of competitive depth. They're really good. Are we writing the SEC champion story? Whether it's Florida, Tennessee, Alabama, Auburn, does one of those teams get through? Florida's playing really good basketball right now, 11-12 wins. Walter Clayton, a guard, we wrote a feature about him last week. Football background, by the way. He was a really good football player that ended up playing point guard. Good story there. Or is it Michigan State breaking the 25-year Big Ten drought? That's another possible story with Tom Izzo. I think they're the team best fit to do it. They had a clunker against Wisconsin, but it's still a really good team. Or is it St. John's and Rick Pitino and this story of the Big East basketball? And I'll admit to this, is I watch the Big Ten tournament first every weekend of conference tournament weekend. That's the one I prioritize. It's on the big TV. Man, I was watching a lot of those Big East tournament games, whether it was UConn, Marquette, Creighton, St. John's. Having the games in the Garden's pretty cool. UConn, can they beat Florida in the second round? Dan Hurley, what's he going to do with that team? They don't look the same as the last 2 years, but you can't play poorly against them.
You got to go out and play to win. And it's interesting. You mentioned 25 years. I mean, Tom Izzo would be breaking his own drought record because they were the last team to win it. Bill, I mean, you might be able to do research. So for coaches that have won multiple national titles, I can't imagine there's anyone with more than 10 or 12 years in between them, let alone 25.
Right. And I love watching Tom Izzo coach. There's another guy that coaches hard, and you watch how unselfish their basketball team is. It's kind of brought this segment full circle a little bit. I think Tom Izzo is, for the last 25 years, was what Bob Knight was the first 25 years of our life. He didn't win it every year, but they were always in the mix, coached hard, played great defense. Not a ton of NBA guys, but this year's team has like 6 or 7 guys that average 7 points per game. And they'll be up in Cleveland in the first weekend. And I think they'll get through that first weekend like they normally do. And I just like Tom Izzo that 25 years later, I think I was a junior or sophomore in college when they beat Florida in the national championship game. And he's still doing it with the same enthusiasm on the sideline. I think it's remarkable. And it is time for the Big Ten drought to end. I'm sick of writing that story every year in March for us in Sporting News. Somebody needs to break that drought right away.
It's just a wash, rinse, and repeat. You can go check out Bill's March Madness picks at Sporting News. Listen, you can throw that up there for us, Pat, as he does a great job. So I want to take a quick pick. This is your Final Four right here, Bill. I mean, how good do we feel about this? And by the way, like, is Duke, the more things change, the more they stay the same? And are we worried about that Cooper Flagg ankle?
A little bit. I made the joke in my article there that, a couple times when I've done this expert bracket, I'm the only person at Sporting News who picked Virginia the year they lost to UMBC, and Kentucky they lost to St. Peter's. So take this with a grain of salt. Did have UConn last year, but everybody did. And I made the joke that I'd probably been doing brackets for 35, however many years since I was a kid at St. Mary's elementary school. And the default setting's Duke. It's like, I don't know who to pick. I'll just pick Duke. And this year I like it, though. I liked how they played in the ACC tournament without Cooper Flagg. I like their bracket, probably the easiest of those 4 teams to get there. And I really like the way Florida's playing on the other side. So if I wasn't picking Duke, I would probably pick Florida with the guards. young coach Todd Golden that I think is going to, come on and be in a lot of living rooms over the next few weeks. And, they're like not considered a blue blood, but they've been pretty solid over the last 15, 20 years.
It's been very, very good. And that's very impressive. So go check that out. All Bill's great stuff at Sporting News. All right, we're going to take a quick break. So I want to talk to Bill a little bit about some college football. Spring ball full in the mix. Get a couple minutes in on that as well here on the Bobby Carpenter Show.
The Big Play Sports Network. Download the free app today to watch all of your favorite hosts on demand.
I'm Garage Beer, and this is Bobby Carpenter.
Garage Beer. Beer-flavored beer.
Beef with an F? Okay, my bad. It's crisp and cool, and it doesn't taste like... I'm Bobby Carpenter. I drink in garages because my wife says I don't belong inside. If you like a cold breeze on your bag, drink Garage Beer. It's American, and so can you. Garage Beer. Beer-flavored beer. All right, welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show. Our guy Bill Bender want to talk a little bit college football now, and it's interesting, Bill, at the Ohio State press availability after practice. The question was asked to Ryan, I think, about my guy Jeremy Birmingham. Does it feel different? Are you different? Like, you're more relaxed now, and it kind of laughed, and he seemed that way. And it got me thinking, Ryan was that guy that, early on in his career, college football playoff, loses to Clemson, loses to Bama in the championship next year, has had some heartbreaks, losing to Georgia. Who is that next coach here in spring ball, Bill, that I would say people are circling, but you're looking at saying, okay, you're the next guy, but if 2 years from now you haven't found a way to kick on through and get that championship, that people will start questioning, are you able to be that guy to get it done?
That's a great question. And for years, Ryan was that guy that we had earmarked as the next coach to win a national championship. And one thing that stuck out in his availability before the championship game is he was talking about how he still thought about the end of that Clemson game, the one where T. Higgins, how many steps did he take, Bobby? Was it 4 or 5? I don't know how many, but that game in particular and how it didn't sit with him. And, for him to get a national championship, I do think it takes a lot of pressure off. And now when you're dealing with a sport where only 3 guys have one, Kirby, Dabo, and Ryan, 3 active ones, of course, he's right there at the top of the profession. I'll give you 2, though. I think Dan Lanning is 1. They've had a lot of success at Oregon, but if you start getting to the playoff and having what happened to them in the Rose Bowl a couple more times, that will perk up. I'm not going to say Marcus Freeman because I think actually what he's doing at Notre Dame, he's a little bit ahead of schedule in my opinion. So it's hard. I didn't think Notre Dame would be in a national championship game this year. I thought that was something maybe next year, 2 years from now. So I think he's not that guy. But if I had an answer, it'd probably be Dan Lanning and then Kalen DeBoer at Alabama, because that pressure after losing 4 games this year is going to ratchet up a little bit.
So that was going to be it. I was going to ask about Kalen. Do you think Sark's on that list?
That's a tough one because I think if Sark has games like he had against Ohio State where you can question in-game decisions, then maybe. You know what I mean? Like they get down to the goal line against Ohio State a couple times, can't put the ball in. Otherwise, that was or the Travion Henderson screen pass where you're like, how does that happen both ways? Not only was it a good play call by Ohio State, but you're like, did you really run a safety blitz into that? So I think if those happen with him, he could be that guy. But I think what he's done at Texas is finally get them up and running like they should be. Like we always talk about, is Texas back? Is Texas back? As far as a national championship contender, I would say the answer is yes. But if they have games like that against Ohio State where they leave thinking, man, we could have won that game, we lost by 2 touchdowns, then those questions will perk up.
Yeah, it's interesting because almost losing close games, Bill, magnifies some of those decisions even more. And right, wrong, or different, people are going to lean in on them and they're always going to be hypercritical of them. But that's why I was just kind of threw Sark in there, because it was kind of like Ryan. I mean, you're on the doorstep getting ready to tie up a football game to go to the national championship. And next thing you know, you lose by 2 scores off one crazy play. But like, you talk about it was the T. Higgins or the Kuda strip, like that stuff happens. And then people begin looking back like, well, you kind of forget about it. You're like, well, he had a chance to win and he just didn't. And that pressure, as it begins to mount, then people build that narrative around you where, hey, you're really good, but can you win that game where talent is equating?
Well, yeah, and I always tell people, I tell my kids, it was funny. I had a couple months ago, I had a basketball huddle with my team, and I said, it was after Ohio State, Michigan, and I went around to every player and I said, okay, whose fault is it that they lost? And I would say 9 out of the 12 kids, and these are 8th graders, right? And they said Ryan Day. So at the end of the day, you can blame a player or a kicker or a sequence, but it always falls on the coach. And Ryan knows that, right? And I think you raise a great point. Like, what I remember about that Clemson game is that play. And I think there was a drop touchdown in there. And then, Fields, there was an interception at the end of the game, but it still goes on the coach. And that's what they sign up for. They know that. So that's why I was so happy for Ryan Day at the end of the Notre Dame game, because of all the criticism, all the pressure, hearing you tell me on the field that, what a great human being he is and the things he does in the Columbus area. For him to get a national championship, I thought was pretty cool. And now I'm wondering, how do you balance as a coach? And I'm going to be out at practice Wednesday. I'm looking forward to seeing it. How do you turn the edge back on? Because at what point, you did this as a player. At what point is the honeymoon of, hey, we won this thing over, we're going to go try to do it again? And that's what separates programs like Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia from the rest.
Yeah, it was interesting. They just put all of the banners up and all the new stuff. I don't know if you saw it come out on social media, but the creative team does a great job over there. But that's it, like turning the page. All right, the stuff is up. Guys were a part of it. There are some guys now more than ever before, because you have transfers coming in, and then some of the high school guys who were there for it, but they weren't a part of making it happen. And so how do you reset that? And this year, Bill, in an era where, you literally had 2 months from the final game to when you started spring ball. That's what's going to be interesting. I know we hammer the calendar all the time, but trying to find a way as they try to flip that thing over and to make sure that you have enough time to kind of clear it, but then also have the work and to get into it. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts next week about what you see Wednesday. And is it as intense? People said it's not more relaxed, but maybe it is a little bit, like they're still getting after it. But, those guys are hungry, but there was a lot of pressure. We used to keep saying championship or bust every other interview. I think everybody was feeling that, tangibly throughout the season.
Yeah. And what's new, and I know Jerry sent an email a couple days ago or yesterday maybe, and you see all the coaching changes. And then it hits you, man, they got a lot of different guys on the staff now. And how is that continuity going to work out? I know our leading question, as always, is what sports reporters do, is you start asking questions about the quarterback situation. Who's it going to be? And here's one thing for everybody and I think playing quarterback at Ohio State is arguably, other than maybe Alabama, and I would say even more now, if you're the quarterback at Ohio State, it's one of the most pressure-packed positions in all of college football. And the last 2 years, Kyle McCord and Will Howard averaged 3,590 yards. They totaled 59 touchdowns and threw 16 interceptions. So your standard is basically 3,600 yards, 30 touchdowns, 8 picks. That's a high standard. So whoever takes over, and that's not even talking about before that when it was JT and Dwayne and CJ, Braxton, first-round picks at quarterback. So that's the battle we'll be paying a lot of attention to heading into the fall.
Well, and I'll leave you with this, Bill. It's not even the picks or the touchdowns. It's when they're thrown. It's the timeliness of them. You can't be throwing end of game interceptions. You need end of game touchdowns to ultimately get that done. And people will let maybe that ratio slide a little bit more. I appreciate it. Looking forward. Hopefully I'll catch you out there Wednesday at practice, and we'll catch up again next week.
Yeah, I'll see you over there. Thanks so much for having me on. Have a great week. Good luck on your brackets, everyone.
Appreciate it. Bill Bender. Check out his stuff at the Sport News at Bill Bender 92. Does a great job as he puts all his stuff up there. So please go check him out. All right, coming up next, we're going to try to get Schlegs. I don't know where he is, what he's doing, where he's cruising around, but we'll see if we can find that guy and jump him on here in a little bit. Coming on the Bobby Carpenter Show.
Welcome to Big Play, the fastest growing sports media company in America.
I'm gonna keep it straight with you. The reason you should watch our show is because I look good, baby.
Come get some!
Join our millions of fans for live sports talk shows hosted by the top former athletes and sports personalities in the industry.
Ohio, it's my home state.
Obviously, I'm a diehard Cleveland sports fan.
Watch what you want, where you want, when you want. Welcome to Big Play.
Make sure you tune in.
I love you, Cleveland.
All right, welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show. Please, if you're watching, like, subscribe, leave your questions, comments. We love them all, and we appreciate all of that as we come to you. Try to live every Tuesday or every day at 12:30. All right, do you want to try to throw this up? Oh, here he is. S2 driving. Are you driving your car? Is this like a trust situation, Schlegs? He's got such bad service. He's got little frozen.
I mean, what are you doing? I'm sorry. My wife just randomly called me. What are you guys doing? Look, what's up? Say hi. Yes, exactly. So we're up here in Maine. Can you hear me okay, Bob?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, man. Yeah, we're up here in Maine. We're at Hawkins Dynamic. We're going to talk force plates. We're going to talk being violent. How do we put a sensor on the back of the striking machine that's 10 years old and 30 NFL facilities and 125 Division I colleges? And that's what we're doing. So I'm in Maine, and it's beautiful. Look at this thing. I didn't show you the picture. I'll put it on the deal. But when you step down the escalator in the airport, there's a huge moose, some bear, and a bunch of whitetail. And I was like, man, this is pretty nice. And their airport only has 9 gates. It's awesome. I like airports like that. Max efficiency.
Well, it's tough to get lost there, Schlegs. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we fly. Was the flight good? I mean, is everything all right? We feel good about it.
Flight was great. We had I did a lot of work on the first flight. The second flight, I was watching Hunter. They're playing in like some kind of tournament in like Daytona or something for spring break. They're on a whatever. So I'm watching that. I mean, I'm doing work for the Armory. We're up here with the difference. We're gonna get some things figured out. And Ohio State started, spring football, man. A lot of stuff going on. It's a Tuesday. You got quarterback battles, just like we talked about last week, Bob. But you got guys in different positions. You got Nate Edmond over there on the sideline. And again, we said it to you boys, like boys and gals and dudes and dudettes. Listen, first off, Bob and I could, just so you guys know, all these insiders and all this stuff, Bob and I can break a lot of things to you, but we're also people of integrity, and we don't give a with people.
Oh no, we lost him. But the last thing you heard is Schlegs is a man of integrity, and that's true. The sad thing is, folks, I forgot to ask him off air who he was even talking about as our other guy, and who was going to be potentially as the new hire for the Buckeyes. And yeah, he didn't let me know it. And then I found out with Nate Edmond, so I had to text my dude and be like, "You couldn't tell me. Schlegs couldn't tell me. No one could tell me on that, but Schlegs did know, and I probably should have known had I asked and found that out. I was out, Buckeye cruising and everything else, and then spring breaking, and I was happy to see that for my guy, Nate Edmond. We talked about opening the show because I think it's going to be a huge, huge asset for him. So we appreciate my guy Schlegs hopping on with us. We might try to wrangle him in tomorrow as we got a big show with AJ coming up. But right now, we're going to have some of our tailgate talk coming up where I answer your questions. We threw a couple in the chat. We'll get that rolling here coming up next on the Bobby Carpenter Show. All right, welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show. And now we got our tailgate talk brought to you by our friends over at Real Truck. Outfit your truck, Jeep or Bronco at realtruck.com. Bring it to life like Schlegs and I have. He's out there cruising around and doing this. And we got a great one from Troy V throwing this out. I picture Schlegs gallivanting out and about on an imaginary horse with coconuts banging to simulate horse riding noise like in the Holy Grail movie. That is pretty good. A little Monty Python right there. That was great. Another one coming from Don here. Shimek saying, Lathan Ransom was a great addition last season. Any plans for another Buckeye to jump in the chair? So Lathan and I, we'd kind of talked about that through spring ball and through the summer, and that's something that I'm going to probably try and start working on here over the next couple of weeks. And it's a little bit of a gauge. Like, I don't want to intrude upon those guys, and I want to help them develop and to be the best people they can be on air. And if that's something they want to do, like I told them, it's just like practice. It's more reps. And so you see how good Lathan's getting and being able to kind of interact and share some personal stories and talk, and you can see there's energy. So I've got to find that guy. If that guy exists, if nobody wants to do it, I don't tell them it's no pressure. I just want to give guys an opportunity to be able to help grow and then, to market themselves, market their brand, and do all of that as well. One came here from Steely Matt. Do you think Coach Day will stay at OSU long term? He followed up. I know he signed the long-term contract, but his son has 2 years left in high school. And that's true. RJ's a sophomore. He'll be a junior, but he also has 2 younger girls that I believe are 8th grade and 6th grade, if I'm not mistaken. I think Ryan, I've said this a million times. I think Ryan loves it here. I think his family loves it here. Last 3-4 years, it's been probably 50 weeks a year that you love it, but winning a national title changes some things. He signed the long-term deal, and I was happy that he did. I was worried that, that he could leave, and that wouldn't be something, this wouldn't want to be a place where he would want to stay. But I think he feels that he has more to add, more to give. And, coaches don't need, they don't look for approval in the fans. I promise you that. But, with his family, I think that was a big piece of it, is making sure that, his family, his kids, like, you can, not even his son, it's really his daughters, like, and they're getting older now, but when you're in elementary school, you're getting heat like that, 3-4 years ago, it's tough. And I know as a dad, and as anyone out there who's a parent could relate, and you're like, your kid didn't do anything about this. They don't have anything to do with it, but he signed that long-term deal. And I don't think he would have signed it had he not planned on being here long-term. Ryan is very authentic. He values people. He cares about people. Those things like that matter to him. And I think he loves being in Columbus, Ohio, and I think he loves coaching at Ohio State. And so I think that would have to also have to change for something big, for him to potentially leave or something else to happen with that. So I can't, like I said, I'd never say never, and I'll never expressly put my brain inside someone else's head and tell you this is what they're thinking. But if you listen to what people say and you watch what they do, I always tell people, just try to triangulate that. Are their actions and their words consistent with what they tell you their values are and what means a lot to them? And I know Ryan is a big family guy. That means a lot. I think his family's pretty happy here for the most part. And like winning a national title, like those things help ease some of that. His son likes being here. Like he trains over Schlegs at the Armory. Like there's a lot of positive things. He's got a great staff, and he's got a great AD in Ross Bjork. And there's a lot of people that are supporting that. So it's really, really a big deal. Really, really a big deal. We're going to end this edition of Tailgate Talk. And without Schlegs here, I'm going to have to give you the parting thoughts. And my parting thoughts will be on some March Madness traditions here coming up next. All right, final segment of the show. And with that, Pat, we can throw up there the parting thoughts. Phil J, favorite March Madness tradition. My buddies and I always take off work, sit in the house in the afternoon hours, then go to a bar for the evening. You know what's wild? Like some years it's on St. Patty's Day, so you're out doing that. I like to watch a lot of it. Some of my favorite memories, though, and this was back, we didn't have cable growing up, and it was just all on CBS. And so I'd be sitting there in our house with my dad and watching it, bouncing back and forth, and they're flipping games, giving the best ones. And like those are some of the best memories I have of my dad and brothers watching March Madness back in the day. And it really connected and hit home. And so I try to watch some of it with my kids, and like going to a bar and hang out with your friends is great. And there was a time where I did all that stuff. And now it's like, man, if I can get like my fifth grader and my daughter, son, whoever the heck will join me and watch some of those games at the house, and we can quad box, you can throw them all up, and it's great now. But man, it's something that's really cool and it's really special. So I appreciate you throwing that up there, Phil. Like, and it used to be a time with my friends, where that was all it. And now it's a little bit different. And just try to make sure you can make some time for the people in your life that really care about you. And so I try to do that with my buddies, and occasionally we've done that stuff, but I'm doing it with my kids now. And heck, maybe I get my buddies together and some of their kids, and we'll watch it all as well at home. But that's it for this edition of the show today. We got AJ coming up tomorrow. Hopefully Schleggs will be dropping in again while he's still gallivanting around Maine. Talk to him maybe briefly, and I'll see if I can work on another guest as well. But that's it for this edition of the Bobby Carpenter Show. Thank you for tuning in. Like, subscribe, leave your comments. We love it all. And until then, we'll see you tomorrow.